In Panama, Canadian company First Quantum calls for dialogue following uninterrupted popular demonstrations against the mining contract. In Palestine, Al-Shifa hospital begins evacuations of patients amid a recently reached humanitarian ceasefire. In Canada, 420,000 public employees hold an unprecedented three-day mass strike calling for labor and salary improvements. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Panama, popular demonstrations in rejection of the mining contract have the Canadian company First Quantum on the ropes, which on Tuesday called for dialogue. The company, on the verge of halting production due to the blockades that prevent the flow of vital material, also confirmed that it canceled a payment of $567 million to the Panamanian state. This payment, according to the mining company, covers a period between December 21, 2021 and October 2023. The information does not mention what President Laurentino Cortizo stated a week ago when he affirmed in a message to the nation that the payment is in a restricted account of the National Bank. The People United for Life Alliance responded to the calls from the mining company. The degradation of democracy in Guatemala seems unstoppable. The public ministry will search the social media of the elected presidential binomial and other detainees for elements to commit serious criminal acts. On Tuesday, the attorney of the public ministry, Saul Sanchez, accused the former deputy candidate of the SID movement, Marcela Blanco, of violence, harassment, and disorder in social medias, as well as Bernardo Arevalo and Karim Herrera, for whom they are requesting the lifting of their immunity in order to make them accountable. The prosecution's maneuvers are aimed at preventing the elected government from assuming the presidency. The Puebla group assures that the country is living a progressive coup d'etat, while Arevalo reiterates that everything is made up.
Look, it is a request for the withdrawal of a preliminary hearing in which they say that I have made psycho-influence on the people of Guatemala since March. It is almost like accusing of witchcraft or of immobilizing the people of Guatemala. It is absurd. It has neither feet nor head. They are fabricated accusations that are going to be evidenced for what they are.
In Colombia, delegations from 25 countries participate in the 14th Conference of the Trade Union International of Public Service and Allied Workers. With the attendance of more than 150 international experts, the event began in the city of Bogota this Tuesday and will last until November 23rd. During these days, the specialists will propose solutions to social, economic, and political problems faced by the public utility sector in the country. In addition, the participants will address issues related to tariffs, coverage for the most remote regions, labor conditions, and new technologies.
Today in the world, we are going through a process that we call the reshaping of geopolitics. We were struggling for peace, to work crowdly for social justice, to seek solutions to the climate crisis, to work clearly for the fundamental rights of workers, and of course, for the population in a situation of migration. Are fundamental tasks that we, as workers, must embrace, not only in terms of solidarity, but also in terms of unity.
Press workers in Argentina are on alert after President-elect Javier Milei announced that he would privatize the public media. The decision would affect some 4,000 reporters, photographers, cameramen, designers, editors, and administrative staff. According to estimates, such a measure would impact Radio Nacional, which was founded in 1937, the national news agency TELAM, founded in 1945, and Televisión Pública in 1951, which are all headquartered in Buenos Aires, but have offices all over the country. In response to Milei's warnings, the Argentinian Federation of Press Workers and the Press Union of Buenos Aires have already started to organize assemblies in the affected media under the slogan, "Without public media, there is no democracy." Argentina's stock market reacted with optimism on Tuesday to the resounding election victory of Libertarian Javier Milei. The market rose 20% when it opened on Tuesday, showing its first reaction to Javier Milei's resounding win. The rise was led by state oil company YPF, whose shares rose 34% after the president-elect announced he would privatize it as part of his package of reforms. Milei, a 53-year-old economist and outsider, trounced Argentina's long-dominant Peronist coalition as voters punished the government for decades of economic decline, with annual inflation at 143%. Milei has vowed to ditch the Argentinian peso for the US dollar and shut down the central bank, which he accused of rampant money printing to finance government overspending. In Venezuela, a large representation of young people marched through the main streets of Caracas to celebrate the University Students' Day and to take a stand on Venezuela's sovereignty over the territory of the Guayana Esequiba. From Caracas, our correspondent Luis Guillermo with the details.
The march passed along Universidad Avenue, among other streets, to go through 8 points that reminds us of the stars of the national flag, especially the 8th star that symbolizes the territory of the Venezuelan Guyana Essequibo.
We came out here to support the consultative referendum. Will take place on December 3rd for the recovery of Essequibo territory because it belongs to our country and it has always belonged to us.
We are not recovering anything because it already belongs to us and it is ours. This December 3rd, I invite all young people to vote 5 times yes for the Essequibo.
Thousands of young people marched not only to show their commitments to their university studies, but also to their commitments towards the country and its sovereignty.
First, by supporting the decisions in favor of recovering our territory and not only the Essequibo. They have wanted to take many things away from us, but we are not going to let them do it.
To demonstrate to the world and to the foreign imperialist powers that we will not need the interference from anyone to defend what belongs to us. Long live the homeland.
The march of the university students was carried out to accompany the decisions of the state regarding the territory of the Guyana Essequibo, after the consultative referendum of December the 3rd, when the march will surely continue.
Desde Caracas, Venezuela, en la Cámara de Marcos da Silva, Luis Guillermo García Bencomo, TeleSUR.
Cuban pneumococcal vaccine, Quimio is ready to obtain its health registration before the National Regulatory Authority. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced in a meeting with experts and scientists to update the project that this fact represents a prelude to another high-impact scientific outcome. Quimio has been developed for more than 15 years in a joint effort of several institutions of the Ministry of Public Health and the biopharmaceutical industry. The process has completed clinical tests to evaluate over time how the vaccine affects healthy children and others with diseases of risk. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. On Wednesday, the Israeli government announced a temporary humanitarian ceasefire agreement and provided details of Palestinian prisoners who may be released. The list was published by the Ministry of Justice and includes 300 Palestinian citizens, of whom 274 are boys, mostly teenagers between 17 and 18 years old. The list was published because Israeli law requires that before any prisoner is released, Israelis must be informed within 24 hours if they want to appeal the Supreme Court. In the meantime, they also communicated that the agreement also includes a 4-day ceasefire and that 300 trucks with humanitarian supplies, including fuel, will enter daily. The agreement has generated deep debates in Israel by members of the Israeli far-right who are demanding the nullification of the temporary humanitarian ceasefire agreement. At least 14 Palestinian Red Crescent ambulances have arrived at Al-Shifa hospital, the largest in the Gaza Strip, to begin the evacuation of patients and wounded. After 2 weeks of severe Zionist siege, with an infrastructure severely damaged by bombings, the Palestinian Ministry of Health confirmed that the Red Crescent and the organization Doctors Without Borders have begun evacuating the wounded and patients to ensure that they can survive. Patients with renal diseases will be transferred to the Abu Yusuf al-Najjar hospital in Rafah, and the wounded will go to the European hospital in Khan Yunis. An estimate of about 250 patients and workers are still trapped in the building. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas welcomed the scope of a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The Secretary General of the Executive Committee of the Organization for the Liberation of Palestine, Hussein El-Sheikh, who is also spokesman for the presidency, stressed that the head of state and all national leaders welcomed the agreement. The Palestinian executive also reaffirms the need to reach a political solution based on international norms that can lead to the end of the occupation and the establishment of a sovereign and independent Palestinian state. Meanwhile, the Zionist occupiers' attacks continued throughout the Gaza Strip, killing at least 44 Palestinians, most of them women and children. While it was known that the truce agreement was imminent, the Palestinians were aware that the hours leading up to it would be difficult. 75 years of occupation have allowed them to know Zionism very well. Early on Wednesday morning, the occupying army attacked the Kamal Adwan hospital in the north of the Strip in the New Serat refugee camp. 9 civilians died and dozens more were killed in another attack on the Al-Fallujah area in the Jabalia refugee camp. Hundreds of displaced Palestinian refugees have lost their lives in one of the heaviest nights of Israeli bombardment since the siege began. Many no longer know where to seek refuge to protect their lives. For more information, our correspondent Nur Harasin reports directly from Gaza.
It was one of the most intense nights here on the people of Middle Gaza. We're talking about more than 130 people that were killed only in Israeli strikes on Al-Burej refugee camp and Al-Nusayrat refugee camp in Middle Gaza. Actually, the bodies that you are seeing behind me are the bodies of those people. We are talking whole families, Al-Baz family, Al-Hajj family, Ayyash family, and many other families, totally erased from the Palestinian civil lists. We are talking men, women, their children. Actually, some of the people that were killed are just few months old babies. This is the situation on the ground, and this is happening actually in southern Gaza. This is the so-called safe area by the IDF, where the IDF asked Palestinians to actually evacuate and flee to these areas for their safety. However, the Israeli airstrikes is following these people wherever they evacuate. Nur Harazin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said his government would use all available measures to protect its borders from Palestinian refugees. The statement was made during a parliament session on Tuesday as a result of the North African country's fears that a mass exodus of Palestinians onto Egyptian soil would nullify Palestinian demands for statehood and would jeopardize Egypt's security and economy. Since the start of the conflict, Egypt has continually ruled out becoming a host nation for displaced Palestinians. However, thousands of dual nationals, along with hundreds of injured and sick Palestinians, have crossed from Gaza into Egypt during the past weeks.
Egypt absolutely and totally rejects the displacement of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Egyptian land and rejects all Israeli procedures to force Palestinians to do this and consider this matter a threat to the Egyptian soil and sovereignty. Therefore, Egypt will not hesitate in taking all measures that guarantee the protection of its borders. And Egypt, in case the occurrence of any scenario that targets the fleeing of Palestinians to Egyptian land, will have a firm response in accordance with international law. Egypt has a clear stance in respecting the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty and is committing to its terms, but we are expecting the same stance in return from Israel, especially regarding the current measures in the Gaza Strip and what it can form as an indirect threat to the Egyptian state.
The United Nations Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, held a press conference emphasizing that UN peacekeepers are not a magic wand, referring to international criticism about the management of his organization in the current conflict in Gaza.
We never forget that in spite of all these challenges, again, hundreds of thousands of civilians are protected every single day by our peacekeepers. Ceasefires are being protected. If you don't have these operations on the ground, what would happen? Would the situation be any better? In most cases, it would probably be much worse. It doesn't mean that peacekeeping operations are the magic wand or the universal response to every kind of crisis.
The Parliament of South Africa voted to break off relations with Tel Aviv and close the Israeli embassy in the city of Pretoria. After debating the motion, the South African legislature proceeded to vote and reached 248 votes in favor and 91 against the closure of the Israeli embassy. Experts warned that the decision increases tensions between the two nations after Israel carried out an extermination in the Gaza Strip. Following this resolution, the South African government will have to decide whether to implement the motion passed in Parliament. The decision comes after the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, criticized Tel Aviv for violating international law and committing war crimes against Palestine. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. An unprecedented three-day mass strike began on Tuesday in Quebec as 420,000 public employees got tired of waiting for answers to their demands for labor and salary improvements. Grouping the collective known as the Common Front, formed by the Central Union of Quebec, the Confederation of National Unions, the Alliance of Health Personnel, and the Federation of Workers, they remained on the streets on the second day of protest. They have been trying for a year to negotiate better working conditions and wages, but the government does not listen to them. They have the lowest wages in the country, many depend on food banks and triple work shifts. It is a historic strike in Canada, and this Wednesday the presence of demonstrators increased. On Wednesday, authorities registered a 6.7 magnitude earthquake in Vanuatu in the province of Sanma. The U.S. Geological Survey reported the earthquake occurred near the small town of Port Audrey in the Pacific Ocean at a depth of 10 kilometers, but it did not trigger a tsunami warning. It was confirmed that the intensity of the earthquake was widely felt in the epicenter zone, where it is suspected to have caused slight to moderate damage. Russia has destroyed 4 unmanned Ukrainian gunboats that were heading for the Crimean Peninsula on the northern coast of the Black Sea. On Wednesday, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the 4 unmanned gunboats were detected in the western part of the Black Sea and were subsequently destroyed. No information was provided on casualties, injuries, or material damage. In Russia, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, at a meeting with senior military commanders, stated that Ukrainian efforts to cross the Dnieper River have failed.
While continuing successful active defense, the Russian groups of forces are steadily holding positions along the entire line of contact and are gradually improving their positions. The enemy is under constant fire, which prevents it from advancing. All attempts by Ukrainian armed forces to conduct a landing operation in the Kherson sector have failed, thanks to the proactive and professional actions of our military personnel. Part of the Marine Corps and Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian troops have suffered colossal casualties. Overall, since the beginning of the month, the enemy has lost over 13,700 people and about 1,800 units of various weapons and military equipment.
The Russian government reiterated its denunciation of the West's attempts to maintain foreign interference in Ukraine on the 10th anniversary of the Euromaidan coup d'etat. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov recalled the events of the unrest in 2014 when groups of extremists financed from abroad carried out coup actions against the then president of Ukraine, Yanukovych. The Kremlin categorized Euromaidan as those violent acts that led Ukraine to the loss of its state autonomy, and now it is maintained by Western colonizers to determine its domestic and foreign policy. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with his Tajikistan counterpart Emomali Rahmon in Moscow on Tuesday. The two leaders discussed bilateral cooperation and other international matters, including security. In a joint statement following the talks, the Russian president said that Moscow plans to actively use the capabilities of its military base in Tajikistan to maintain peace and stability in the Central Asian region. On the other hand, Rahmon thanked Russian law enforcement and intelligence for close cooperation with Tajik colleagues in the sphere of fighting cross-border organized crime. A popular fireworks festival returned to Myanmar's Shan state, but crowds stayed away from the military-backed event as violent clashes spread across the country. Tuesday marked the return of the Tasaun Dain Festival to the city of Tangui after a 3-year hiatus due to the coronavirus pandemic and unrest following the military's seizing power in 2021. The usually riotous events sees teams load batteries of fireworks into homemade hot air balloons, with referees judging both the design of the contraptions and the magnificence of their aerial explosions. But this year's military-managed celebration was mute, with the revelers staying away and a heavy presence of security personnel deployed as the junta battles coordinated attacks across the country. We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSURenglish.net. You can also join us on our social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.